Remembering the Brave, Overweight Oil Workers, and a Centre for Illustration. Welcome to Mark and Pete. Today, we're remembering those who are actually courageous today. We're debating waistlines in the North Sea and celebrating the illustration of Sir Quentin Blake, who appears to have constructed a temple to doodling. Welcome, as I said, to Mark and Pete, two blokes with half an opinion. Let us proceed with our first story.
The brave sacrifice. Folk who are extremely brave bear scars for the sacrifice that they gave, and combat those who misbehave for all the innocent lives they save. Well, King Charles has led the 2-minute silence on the commemoration for the National Service of Remembrance at the Cenotaph. Now, he laid the wreath in traditional fashion at the monument in the central London as part of the services to remember those who died in conflict. Now, typically, many people tend to think about the First World War, the Second World War, those who are veterans, of course, in many other wars. The question really is that when we think about the brave, should we be thinking about those who are offering bravery in today's actions? Mr. Pete, there are many important things when we come to this time of year, and we typically tend to sort of think of those long-serving veterans who saved our nation. But what about those brave people who also showed great courage in recent times? I'm thinking particularly those who were on board on the Huntington train who stopped a knife attacker from killing people and maiming people. So bravery comes in many forms. Maybe it's a celebration that's something that should happen more often throughout the year.
Yes, I mean, I think Remembrance Day is a specific day. It's on Armistice Day at the end of World War One, because that's when we started to remember the great numbers that had fallen during that war. And then, of course, really World War Two was pretty much a continuation of that war. So it continued after that. Remembering those who had fallen in war then became the focus of this particular day, or the Sunday near it being Remembrance Sunday. On the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, we keep 2 minutes silence. Now, I think it's perfectly reasonable to say, well, why don't we include people who have been brave in other ways? Why is it just military service? Well, I think that it is a good idea to do that. I'm not sure whether it actually then loses its focus, and you could have another day for that, or as you say, series of days, making it such that you just go to the palace and get a medal. Well, that's not that in itself is a bad thing, although maybe it's seen by some as a little old-fashioned these days. But well, I think a regular celebration of those who are brave just gives the cue that we appreciate this, whereas the cues being sent by those in authority, by the way those who are treated, who stand up for others, is rather the opposite. I think of a whole series of cases where people who've stood up against attackers have themselves being arrested and accused of a crime when they were stopping a crime. So, yeah, this will be a step in the right direction, I think, to remember those who are brave. Now, people pointed out that, in fact, this is a great point about diversity as well, because diversity is not our strength. As is often said, diversity, of course, causes problems. But just because someone is from a different background to the main population in England doesn't mean they shouldn't be celebrated. For example, the Muslim member of staff on the train who I think got the worst injuries in that particular incident at Huntington that you referred to, where they got off the train. It was a Muslim, and yet he's to be celebrated for his bravery. So I think this is a great way of, it's not just people in the military, but if you do it at the same time, it'll water it down, I think. Both focuses will be lost. So I think, why not have a different day or series of days? Could be a regular thing.
Well, this is my point, because I want to make really, really clear that we should have, certainly in November, that point to remember those who have fallen in major wars as well as conflicts that we have seen 20th century and even this 21st century.
Yeah, sure.
Let's be honest, there are people who are still in conflict. We could think of those in Ukraine, fight against Russia, and many other things that we could probably cite, unfortunately. And sadly, conflict still continues. But what I'm also really thinking about here is that bravery does come in different forms. You have also bravery, not necessarily where there is conflict. It could be that people are in distress. If you think about those who put their lives on the line, whether because, let's say, for example, somebody at sea needs help, and the RNLI go out and help people. They put their lives on the line, and this is something that again is often sort of almost accepted and assumed. And what's interesting is that if you think about the RNLI, that's really funded by charity. It's
Yeah,
donations. This isn't something that comes from the government, folks. So I know we're an island in the United Kingdom, and yet, ironically, my opinion is I think that maybe the government is missing a trick here because, in my opinion, I think that you need, as an island, to have a national approach to this. But for many, many years, people who are brave at sea or are helping people on the beach who get into trouble really comes down to volunteers. So I think it's that side. Now, some people will say, hold on, there is definitely awards for various people
yeah,
who offer
sure.
bravery, and there are definitely programs that do that. And I would say continue that. What I'm really thinking about, is there a way in which we can sort of remember these people, or at least acknowledge their achievements, rather
Yes,
than have to sort of wait at a given
yes,
moment in
yeah,
time? I think it
yeah,
should be something that's more
sure.
ongoing.
There certainly are days like that, and there are charities that do similar things, and bring Dad of the Year and this sort of thing, and honour the bravery of those
Yeah.
suffering from particular diseases, that sort of thing. But yeah, a general day of bravery, maybe the Remember the Brave Day, keep it simple.
Well,
Uh,
that would be good. There you
yeah,
go.
that would be great. And when such a day can be sort of adopted or licensed or even just approved of by the government, but it could be started by a charity or just a pressure group of people who want it to happen. So, I guess that's a question for the listeners. What do you think? Should there be a
Yeah.
Remember the Brave Day, and should we be lobbying, organising people for it to happen? Let us know. Get in touch.
Well,
markandpete.com.
I agree. And what would be very interesting is, what symbol would you say depicts bravery? Because I know obviously the poppy is very much an
That's
icon
true. Yeah.
of what we see in Remembrance Day for those who have fallen in war. But if we were to widen it to bravery, what would you think would be a
Yeah.
good idea? What sort of symbol
That's
or
an
even slogan
interesting
or message
question. Yeah.
would very much sort of echo that
Yeah.
thought?
Yeah.
Well, look, we move on to a different subject, and this is, dare I say, more about waste not, want not.
Yeah.
Folk whose weight is felt from a bursting, bulging belt, make more haste, work the waste, and get yourselves more svelte. Yes, indeed.
Yes.
Well, remarkably, we are not making this up, folks. Thousands of North Sea oil workers, yes, they are still working, yes, folks, are being told that they must lose weight if they are to keep flying offshore, or they will face losing their jobs. Remarkably, yes. So the industry body of Offshore Energies UK, that's OEUK, said that the maximum clothed weight for a worker heading offshore should be 124.7 kilograms. That's
Yeah.
19 and a half stones, folks, so that they can be winched to safety in an emergency. Now, Mr. Pete, I know that you're probably standing on your scales right now thinking, oh, I've
Absolutely.
already exceeded that. However, it is remarkable in the sort of weight sensitive world that we're in. This is now a different scenario, because basically what's happening here is that the average worker is getting bigger. And many have been interviewed to say they've now got to change their lifestyle. So, what do you say about this? And really, should we even think about it way beyond the offshore energies sort of industries when it comes to weight?
Yeah. Well, yes. It's a wake up call. I think this being noted. I mean, even with the obviously rather heavy clothing, padded clothing that, with bits of equipment on it, no doubt, that exceeds 19 and a half stone, it still means you're pretty hefty. Um, I don't. It's a wake up call to the country. We should not be that heavy. Uh, Very few people, even if someone is 6 foot tall, they shouldn't be 19 stone or 18 stone, whatever they are. Even a 19 and a half stone, if you were, you know, to weigh that naked, that would be. That's. I was going to say that's obese, but it is obese, but that's pretty much terminal. I would have thought you're not going to be around that long if you're that heavy, are you? Surely that's just ridiculous. Now,
Well, I
um,
think to be fair, that is with the equipment.
yeah,
They have
sure.
to
Yeah,
go.
no, I've got that. I get that. But if it's 19 and a half stone with
It's
their
still heavy.
clothing on, then they might be 18 stone or something.
Yes.
It's still very heavy. So, yeah, I think that it's perfectly justifiable. They, there's just physical limits. How much can the helicopter carry? Um, because you're just going to carry one person at a time because they're so heavy.
Mhm.
I don't know. The weight limit is probably higher than that for the helicopter, but you've got to carry equipment as
Well,
well.
it's actually
Um,
not just so much the
Look,
helicopter, it's
we
actually a
all need
safety
to.
winch.
Yeah, yes, we all. Yeah. Do you have to be winched aboard because you're so heavy?
Yes.
Uh, we all need to cut down on the sugar, do a bit of exercise, and get down to a healthy weight. Uh, I think we were saying, I can't remember whether you just said it or you said it off air, that the average weight was 70 kilograms. Is that right?
Well, that's what it was.
Yeah, back in the 70s. Yeah.
Yes,
Now
correct.
that's is that the average? Was that for a male, or that's just the
It's
average
mainly
overall?
male. There are female
Male.
workers, but it's primarily male.
Okay, male. So 70. It was for those workers. It was 70
Yes,
kilograms, which is about 10 and a half stone. That's pretty light, isn't it? Um,
yes,
I'm something like 74 kilograms. So
yes,
without giving my height,
and
you can't
growing.
tell whether that means I'm slim or overweight. But it's a bit heavier than that. But it's certainly not up to the. I wouldn't be. I wouldn't be. I was saying I would be able to fly in the helicopter.
Yes.
But,
Well, it
it's quite a reasonable thing to say, "Look, at least keep
yeah.
your way within those limits." And maybe, yes, this should be a requirement for work more broadly. I mean, it's just unfair on employers to have someone who is so overweight
Well, it's
that
it's it's
they're
actually
gonna be
unfair on
taking
the
time
National
off
Health
work.
Service as well, but here's
Yeah,
here's the thing.
they
Here's
require
where it
special
really comes
training,
back,
whatever it
because
might
the
be.
OEUK has said that the average weight of offshore workers has risen by almost 10 kilograms since 2008. That's about a 1.5 stone increase. So basically, what they're saying is workers, mainly male, there are some exceptions, are primarily getting heavier. So the decision to implement these safety weight measures is really not just for the winching safety, but also for the safety of individuals. Now, there are rules that are around this to introduce sort of organizations to also get onto helicopters. You've talked about that. But also, it's about how, when they're actually on the platforms and many others, there is a lot of physicality which goes to this type of job. And of course, if you're not fit enough, then that is one of the challenges. Now, many of these workers have recognized this. So some people have been interviewed about this and asked, what their opinion is. And they actually have recognized that perhaps they've been a bit lazy, or maybe they've had the wrong diet, or they haven't even had, ironically, enough time to exercise because they've been in a particular environment. They have to use what's called basically a non regular pattern of work. They may have several weeks on, several weeks off, several weeks on, etc., which is very, very disruptive. So you have to also think about, in this particular case, they've got a very unusual lifestyle, very
Yes, sure.
demanding as well. So managing that is probably very, very difficult. I guess the question really is in the broader sense, is that really, I think it's a combination. I would have said you can blame the individuals, but maybe this is where I think the employers need to work with the individuals to find the best balance. Not just balance of diet, balance of exercise, and balance of work. Surely this is something that if there is a problem, and clearly statistically there is, they need to work together to sort of improve things.
Yes.
Well, look, let's move on to a different story, and this one is a little bit more along the right lines. The concept of perfect illustration complements good narration. From simple sketching to tiny etching, it draws on inspiration. Oh, yes. Now, this is very much to something that I value. And I love the idea of amusing illustrations and also different styles from around the world. Now, the good news is this, folks. The UK's first permanent home for illustration will open in central London in May of next year to celebrate its traditions and welcome the astonishing diversity of art across the world. Mr. Pete, yes, this is the 18th century waterworks in Clerkenwell, and it is going to be transformed into the Quentin Blake Centre for Illustration. Well, what say you about this? And I think this is a great idea and certainly something which brings the idea of inspiration and art to life. What do you think about this idea?
Well, you'll have more to say, Mark, with your interest in art and illustration. But from my point of view, from a Christian point of view, the supreme creator is God himself, and all acts of creativity can be seen to have, come from God himself. There was an ancient Greek idea of the muses who inspire people. Well, the Christian idea is sort of similar to that. Say, no, it's God's Holy Spirit who inspires people, who gives you that ability. And in fact, to create comes from God. You're to be celebrated as being part of God's creation if you're a creative yourself. And this is just a quote from Exodus 31, starting verse 2. It said, this is God speaking in the context. See, I have called by name Bezalel, and I have filled him with the Spirit of God in wisdom and understanding and knowledge and in all manner of workmanship. And it goes on to say why. The verse continues, so I have filled him with the Spirit of God in wisdom, etc. 2, devise artistic designs. Yeah, it's right there in Scripture that God wants us to acknowledge, to celebrate, and to value those who are artists. So I think this is great. It's biblical, but
Yes.
for whatever background you come, it's a good thing to do to celebrate artists. And this is a sort of art that we're talking about, illustration, that's because it's part of a creative whole, part of a book, for example. You almost forget to celebrate how great the artist is. So it's good to lift them off the page and put them into a sort of temple of creativity there out in Clerkenwell.
Well, I think that what's interesting is that this is £12.5 million of centre which has been invested in here, which will be the world's largest dedicated space for illustration, and it's been in the making for many, many years. Now, Sir Quentin Blake himself has said that he is proud to think that the centre has his name on it. The illustration is a wonderful, universal and varied language. So essentially, although it's not just about him, the fact that his name has really brought this to light has helped, because obviously he's a well-known, world-renowned illustrator. But I do like the idea of the fact that people can celebrate different forms of art. I think in many ways, in a world which is very, very much sort of overshadowed by doom and gloom, this idea of making sort of wit and wonderment in terms of illustration coming to life is a great way to sort of break away from the sort of problems that we often see in the world. And I think having it as a center is a great thing as well, because many people can open a book, they can go online, they can see things happening in schools or museums and many other places. But having a centre for this, I think, is a good one. Because to your point, I think that what we're really looking for is people who can be imaginative. I think this will not just inspire children, but I think it will also inspire adults as well.
Yes, I think, yes, creativity imagination. These are to be valued, and this is something that I think is not valued enough. In the I'll put it this far: creativity and imagination, inventiveness, or be another way of putting it, is the source of the wealth of a nation. Because it's if you don't have those things, let's put the negative of it, you will eventually be not be competitive with the rest of the world. If you
Yeah.
have if in your businesses you have inventive, creative people, you'll be more successful. Of course, it's wider than business, but I'm just saying, by talking about business, you can see that actually the creative people in our country should be seen, should be valued, and be seen as a source of the wealth of the nation. Is something to be really celebrated and be proud of.
Well, also, what's interesting to note is that this centre will have a free library, it'll have learning spaces, and it will also have art highlighting stories about the actual site, which goes back for more than 400 years. So it offers many, many different things. So we look forward to that. But overall, I think that what we've painted is a picture of very important areas of subjects such as remembrance. Obviously, we need to think about our health, but also painting the picture of illustration and inspiration.
Yes, so that's about it for this week, folks. We've had a good week this week. But oh, by the way, remember to subscribe and don't be a stranger. Keep in touch. Just go to markandpete.com and you'll be able to do that. But if today's show has taught us anything, it's that honor belongs to the living as much as to the dead. Celebrating bravery, we talked about. Dignity, I guess we would say, should apply even to those who are 20 stone in a gale. But they do need to lose those stones. And imagination can yet save us from becoming worthless and humorless. Thank you for joining us. Look after yourselves, look out for one another, and for heaven's sake, don't let the world squeeze the joy and creativity out of you. Catch you next time.